Welcome to the Cultivating Business Growth podcast, bringing you bi-weekly discussions designed to help you grow your business and create the lifestyle you desire. Elevate your business with proven strategies from virtual CFOs, CPAs, and business advisors. We discuss real-world challenges solved with actionable steps that get you the results you need both in business and building the life you deserve.
Welcome to episode 164 of the Cultivating Business Growth podcast, brought to you by Willow Virtual CFO. Today we will be talking about safeguarding your dental practice, financial oversight, and fraud prevention. To help us dive into this crucial topic, we're thrilled to welcome Susan Gunn. Susan is a nationally recognized expert in financial organization, fraud prevention, and business ethics. As a certified fraud examiner, she has spent over 30 years helping healthcare practices, including dental offices, implement financial systems that safeguard against fraud and improve efficiency. She's the author of 48 books, including Money In, Money Out, Sensible Financial Organization in Your Practice, and is a sought-after speaker in the dental and healthcare industries. Today, Susan will share the biggest financial mistakes she sees in dental practices, red flags dentists should watch out for, and simple but effective systems every practice should have in place to prevent fraud and financial mismanagement. Susan, welcome to our show.
Well, thanks for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you. It was really great meeting you in person back in January at a live event, which was great. I know fraud is always an exciting topic and people are very interested to hear all your stories, but kind of never really think it's going to happen to them, right?
No, they never think it's going to happen to them. I did work with the ADA on a survey several years, I think it was 2018. There were very few respondents, and I think that in itself is a big clue. But of the respondents, there was a high repetitive embezzlement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was really interesting to me, and that was probably the most glaring result that we had. I was hoping, because we've always said 3 out of 5, 60%, whatever, but those are just statistics that we've kind of grabbed out of a hat. There hasn't been any real statistical information to base that on, no facts. And that's what I was hoping to accomplish with the ADA, to find out really what was going on. But what I've started telling people as a result of that survey is, if you own a practice for 30 years, trust me, someone at some point in time will try to embezzle you. How much they embezzle from you will depend on the safeguards and the systems and the protocols that you have set up in your practice. But at the time, my average is about $125,000. That's
a whole lot of money.
It is a lot of money. I just finished what will be what I discovered, and what they will be able to find after that will be much higher than 1.2 million. And so, and my lowest one has been $1,800. So it's
right,
like,
that's not so horrible. Not great.
No, it's a pretty wide range. But the less amounts that are embezzled are less amounts because they get caught sooner. And they've got some systems in place.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about that? Can you talk about the importance of financial oversight in dental practices? I know dental practice owners they have to wear so many hats. So it's hard to find time to sit down and look at financials and really learn about it and ask questions. But if you can talk to the importance of why they really should be making that time.
Yeah. And really you have to go back to, what are they doing? And so 85% of the accounting software of the whole accounting package is done in their practice software. Only 15% is done in the accounts payable software. So together that makes 100% of the accounting, right? Well, typical CPAs only see this 15%. And so if they don't have a design that sets up a back-to-back accountability between the two, and there is a way to do it quite easily, actually, very easily. If they don't have that accountability, then they have a complete disconnect and they don't know what the right hand is doing versus the
Yeah.
left
And you're
hand.
talking about kind of the dental practice software connecting to some of those AP softwares, because
Yeah.
that's where patient billing is
Well,
done. That's where applying deposits is going. And
yes.
that's where a
Well,
lot of the,
let's just give the example of Dentrix into
yep.
QuickBooks. And
Hmm.
so when they collect, they make patient collections, or they do adjustments on those collections, or they have future treatment planning. That's all done in the practice software, as well as sending out the claims, sending out
Hmm.
statements. Everything's done in their practice software. And so then the only thing that's put into this accounts payable is what's deposited at the bank.
Hmm.
Well, what if more was supposed to be deposited at the bank than was deposited? That's why the importance of back-to-back accountability. I've
Hmm.
been preaching this
Yeah.
seriously for 30
Yeah.
years. And
Yeah, and
so,
that's some of our dental practices. They go through a process of like day sheets, right? So every day they're saying,
yes,
"Hey, this is what I collected as credit cards. This is what I collected in cash.
exactly. Yeah.
This is what I
And
collected
those
in
credit
checks," and we
cards,
enter that into QuickBooks. Now, when we compare it to the bank, it has
right.
to match, and if it doesn't, we say, "Wait," right?
Well,
So
and
that's where you got to have
I
that
take it
separate.
one system, one little system, easier for you and them to oversee, is to create income accounts for cash and checks, which would be the physical deposit, credit cards, EFT insurance, care credit, whatever other patient plans. If anything is a separate deposit into the bank, then it needs a separate income line.
Income account. So,
Yeah.
actually, like a chart of accounts,
Yes.
that's a separate one. Yeah, and I saw
Because
that when I was reading through one of your books. Yes, that makes sense.
so because when they print out a date range for the month, which is what I suggest they do, a deposit report for the month, they can go back and say, okay, here's the month. And so the deposits, the cash and checks deposit, should match exactly what the cash and checks deposit should be in both of them. Credit cards will be a little bit off. Care
Mhm.
credit will be off their fee that
Fees,
they
yeah.
take out. But EFT insurance, if it's put into the practice software, it'll be into the bank. So that
Yep.
should match. But if they're off, they'll know where they're off. That's what makes it an easy tool to be
Yeah.
able to
I mean,
say,
I
here's
like the look at, yeah, we can have the doctors or the, office managers doing it on a daily basis. But as a CPA and the, accounting professionals, we can look at it from a higher level point of view. Hey, it's been a month. What is the cash total that should be in here? What is the check total? And just do
exactly.
those checks to make sure we don't see missing checks, right? These are the things somebody can maybe grab a check and deposit it to their own bank account somehow,
Yeah,
a little bit
which
of
has happened,
editing.
which can happen.
Yes. Yeah.
But there
That's
are,
really important.
it is. One of the questions we talked about before was, how do they do it? And I
Mhm.
can't give the specifics of how they do it, but I will tell you, almost every embezzler starts off with padding payroll and seeing if anybody notices.
Mhm.
And then they'll take cash payments and see if anybody notices.
Mhm.
But you
Cash
see,
payments are always my biggest pet peeve. I'm like, just don't try not to take cash. Make that a very little, oh, we have a petty cash, box here where we have a few $100s. And I was like, I know it's not a lot
right,
of money, but you're
right.
just like, the odds of that getting taken by somebody that is not supposed to be using it is very high. It's hard to monitor, manage who has access. And so, it's small dollars, but you're still like, you're just
Oh,
putting it out there
I will
for,
tell you, in some states, it's not small dollars. It's
yeah.
quite substantial amount of money.
Yeah.
Um, but I always give them the example of Target. When the cashier gets the cash drawer, they're
Hmm.
responsible for the money that's in the cash drawer, and it
Right.
gets counted when they get back. And they need to do that in their practice, even though they're not as large as Target.
Right.
They need to do that. There has to be, um, one of the reasons that I see so many embezzlement cases is the lack of built-in accountability between the practice. And so they just fly by the seat of their pants, so to speak. And, they'll do a deposit every 3 or 4 days. There's no really rhyme or reason. No, I believe in daily deposits. If you
Hmm.
don't go to the bank that day, that's fine. But I
Right.
believe in daily deposits. Set it
Right.
aside, put it in an envelope, fold it up with a deposit report, have the person that did it initial the outside, and stick it in a secured drawer. That's the
Yeah.
key.
And is it the responsibility, like when you talk to doctors, right? I mean, they don't have to be the one personally doing these things, but they need to make sure they're being done, right? You need to be
Yeah.
understand enough to say, hey, these are some things that can be a problem. I want to make sure this is what we're doing. What do you tell doctors, to make sure, again, that this is important, not just to be like, yeah, that's really not a concern for me.
I asked them if they believe that Warren Buffett reviewed the reports. He's successful. I mean,
He
seriously,
is.
let's be honest about that. He reviews their reports. Every successful business owner reviews their reports. And they don't need to do it every day. They don't need to be over anal. They just
Yeah.
need to do it in a uniform manner. And once they start doing it, they'll see that it takes less time because they're
Mhm.
used to seeing what they see.
Yeah. And that's one of the things we really like to do with a lot of the dentists that we work with is, we require a monthly review of the financials and we walk them through a balance
There you
sheet.
go.
Does anybody want to look at a balance sheet that you know
Uh,
of, Susan? No, not
no,
really. But let's look at trends. What was the cash balance over the last 4 or 5 months? Does something look odd? And again, the first few times you review it, they don't totally understand it. But eventually I'll have a doctor be like, well, what's this on my I don't remember this from last time, right? It's just starting to understand what was there, what's new, why is it there, just learning to understand it. I mean, you're the business owner, you're in charge of it all, so
exactly.
it's your job, even though we know that they don't get a lot of this education from the business side in dental school. So it's part of the reason we like to work with them, because we know they're smart, they're successful, they're doing great things, but from the financial side of things, we like to help them get into it a little bit more, dig a little deeper, and be
Yeah.
their kind of partner to look at these things with them together.
I
So,
speak at the dental school every year, and I hear that all the time in conferences. They didn't teach us this. Well, they
right,
wouldn't have known what it applied to if it was taught to them. And so
right.
when I speak at the dental school, because you can see their eyes glaze over when you
Oh,
talk
yeah,
about systems
certainly.
and procedures and internal controls. So I just tell them stories. I seriously scare the crap out of them telling them stories
I'm
so
sure.
that they'll pay attention when they become a business owner. And I talk to them about being a business owner and what
Yeah,
that means,
yeah.
probably more than I do about you need to do a daily deposit. I mean, because that's going to go in one ear and out the other
Right. Would you be able
completely.
to share a story that, would kind of resonate and maybe be like, oh, yeah, I should take some more time to look at this? Because I feel like stories are really, then they start to realize the problem. That's really where they start to listen a little more.
Yeah, I can talk about my 1.1. It was 14 years ago or 15 years ago now, I guess. Um, he was a slow start. He had a startup practice, had been in business for 2 years, and decided he needed an office manager. And somebody applied who knew the systems, knew Dentrix, did really well, and she just took over. And he let her. That was the first mistake.
Yeah.
Um, you just can't do that as a business owner. Well, he knows that now. He thought he was slow growing because,
Oh,
again, he had only been in practice for 2 years. And he finally, after 10 years, he finally went to a study club and thought, my buddies are producing the same as I am, but I'm not collecting that much. So
hmm
he hired a consultant. And the first day the consultant was in the practice, she said, "You've got a problem." There was a missing deposit. They asked the office manager about the missing deposit. I never recommend doing that, by the way. Uh,
very
but
initial, yeah, confrontation that,
they know that now. But
yes.
initially, I do recommend they don't do that. And um, they called me when they didn't get a satisfactory answer. Very long story short, she did admit to it 3 days into it,
Oh, wow.
looking, but only admitted to 16,000 first. and then said it might be 60. And it was amazing to me. And he had a bookkeeper, by the way.
Okay. So this was an office manager who
Yeah,
was
office
doing this.
manager. Office manager. It was
And I'm
just
sure he trusted her
trusted her
completely.
blindly.
Yeah.
Blindly. That is the thing. If he had done 3 things differently, it would have never been 1.1 million.
Yeah, that's a lot. Was that over 10 years, you said?
Over 10 years.
Goodness,
Over
that's a
10
lot of
years.
money.
Included padding her payroll, taking cash, and stealing insurance checks, which can be done.
Yeah.
And so, again, I can't tell you how she did it because we don't want to train anybody. But
Right.
if he had done the monthly overview of reports, the
Mhm.
date range of reports, that's when I started really hammering it, saying you need to run all of February. What did you take in as collections? Review the adjustments. Well, I got to tell you, I have a service called Ask the Expert where I work with the doctors for 2 hours and I try to train them to see things through my eyes. After looking at everybody's adjustments list, they don't have a clue. So I try to tell them, you know what, adjustments are money you're not going to collect. So you darn well better know, and I use a little bit stronger language than that sometimes, darn well better know why you are not collecting that money. Why are you not collecting that
Yeah.
money? And if you don't have a good list that covers those things,
Mhm.
which I cover in the
Yeah,
book,
something I hear often is like, "Oh, it's insurance." And they just kind of hang it on that, which could be part of it.
it could be,
But it's,
could be.
again, it's probably, I have some dental clients that, I see write-offs of like 50%. And I'm just like, how on earth is that possible? I'm like, there's either two problems, someone's stealing from you, or you're really not managing your insurance very well because,
Your fee schedules are not correct. That's what I
yeah,
tell them.
you're not getting enough money to make it a profitable business for you to be,
Exactly.
providing the service. So, yeah, so I feel like they do hang it on that, but there's ways to evaluate your insurance and improve that. And then
Right.
if you're still
Exactly.
having problems, then, you have to look a little deeper.
Then you might want to. After I speak, I usually scare them and I get a lot, get a lot
I'm
of
sure.
I get a lot of phone calls that say, "Okay, well I really don't feel good about this." And it's like, "Okay, well,
Well,
let's look at it."
and I don't think it's, we're not trying to use fear tactics. It's just reality, right?
It
And
is.
and live through an experience where somebody stole $1 million from a dental practice over 10 years. I mean, it
Right.
happens. And the fact that there's some simple things that, can go about, to prevent it, that's really important. So we talked a little bit. Is there any other kind of internal controls you look at, or do you kind of hang your hat on these couple of things will essentially help you
I look
manage?
at the collections and I
Okay.
look at the adjustments. I also look at the audit trails,
Okay.
and that's really important.
And when you say audit trails, is that in the practice management system?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so behavior is key.
Mhm.
I've learned through all of these fraud cases that I've collected evidence for prosecution or for civil suit. Um, I've learned that there is behavior in an embezzler that's pretty common. I'm not going to talk about it, but there
Mhm.
is behavior that's common. And
Mhm.
so I review the audit trails. I look as much at the behavior than I do to see what they did.
Is it
So,
typically so the typical person, and as far as my learning and understanding of it, is that, it starts out real small,
mhm.
then they get away with it, so it starts to become bigger. And typically do they get caught because it's either just so much time has gone by, or is it typically that they start to make a mistake or they get a little too greedy? Like which one would you say is
Yes, yes.
both? Both?
Yeah.
Both?
Well, the lower dollar ones might get a little careless,
Okay.
or something happens. They have to take a day off. They're usually that's one of the behavioral signs. They're very
Mhm.
protective of their desk. They don't want anybody else to be in charge of their
Mhm.
desk. And so they will not allow anybody else to work their job. And so if they have to take off because they're sick for an extended period of time, I've had that happen.
Okay. And that's where it starts to pop
Yeah.
up like, hey,
And they
this
go,
doesn't seem
oh,
right. This
wow,
person is not
Susan's
supposed to be making this dollar amount.
right. Exactly. So that's usually a red flag. One of the other employees will say, hey, I saw.
Oh,
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
suspicious.
It seems really weird that.
Okay.
Multiple doctor practices. It could be an associate, which has
Yeah.
happened, that
Yeah. The more
says,
people that you get involved with, more
yeah,
things, it's just harder to control.
right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They get caught that way. Usually, if it's a higher dollar volume, they just get careless. They feel like they've they are owed it. It
Mhm.
becomes, in fact, part of their salary package.
Right. They've been taking it
Mentally,
for so long.
yeah,
It is my
mentally,
salary. You kind of convinced
yeah,
yourself that it is.
yeah, no kidding.
Maybe the doctor isn't aware of it, but that person wants
Well, and I
that
tell
fee or
you,
that.
in some of my cases, they've been paid better than the doctor. So,
Oh, geez, yeah,
oh yeah, yeah,
yeah. It's definitely from a CPA point of view, like I can't even imagine the mindset or like how do you sleep at night, or how do you? But I feel like those folks are like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is like it's part of who they are, and that's just normal for them, which is
you know,
bizarre.
it's interesting to me. I heard a theologian say this a long time that we will come to a fork in the road and we have a decision to make. And when we make the wrong decision for what we should have, we know what's right and we know what's wrong. And if we make a wrong decision that compromises our ethics, it makes it easier the next time that we come to that fork in the road. It makes it easier to make another wrong decision. And that's what I see with the embezzlers. They start with the padding of the payroll. Well, got away with it. So what else can I do? So
Yeah,
come to a fork in the road. Oh, I could take the cash. They'd never know. And it makes it easier. It's like they sear a part of their conscience
yeah,
and
it's
they're able to
crazy.
move on. Yeah.
But it obviously happens. I mean, you've got the stories to back it up. So one thing that I think is important is the culture of integrity at a dental practice as well, because, people sense what's happening at the top down. And so can you talk a little bit about the importance of company culture?
Yeah. So the leader of integrity in the practice, or the leader of the failure of integrity in the practice, can be the practice owner. I often say it's just like your kids. Your kids see everything you do. They watch you. I watched my dad. And that's why integrity is so valuable to me, because he was such a leader in integrity and ethics in everything he did. And so the practice owner has that same responsibility to set that pace. And so the pocketing of cash instead of putting it into the bank, your team members see you do that. And they go, "Oh, well, look, he's doing something wrong or she's doing something wrong, so why can't I take the cash? I should be able to take the
Yeah,
cash."
it's the lead
And I've actually
lead
had
by
that.
example, right? You're like,
Yeah,
well,
lead
you
by
can lead by
example.
example in a positive way or a not so positive way.
Yeah, and not upselling patients, making patient care a priority, being honest with your patients with what they need or don't need. Those are all really important things to lead with integrity. Whatever you can do to establish that accountability and integrity in the practice is so vitally important.
Yeah, totally agree. Integrity is everything, really. And if they
Yeah.
see sketchy behavior, to your point, then they think, well, a little bit of sketchy behavior is probably okay, and that's where it starts, right? As you talk about.
And I should be able to do
Sure. Yes.
fill in the blank. Yeah.
And I know, we talked a little bit about the role of a CPA in dental practices. Can you talk about, how they can
Mhm.
really help, keep doctors on track and making sure they're looking at the right things? having a good CPA? I know we talked about it a little bit, but if you can kind of share your perspective, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, so I always consider my CPA even an extension of my business. They are huge support staff for me in helping me to oversee and helping me make wise decisions for future expenses, ideas, dreams, and plans that I might have for my business. And it's no different for a dental practice. They are an extension come alongside. They're not just, to me, shouldn't be just a do your taxes type entity. They can completely bridge that back-to-back accountability like you and I talked about. They could bridge that back-to-back accountability, but they have to be provided the right tools to be able to do that, as far as being able to see the practice software reports, which should not be run by the office manager, but should be run by the practice owner, to get that information to give to the CPA. I've heard so many times from the CPA, I can't get the reports from the office manager. Well, there might be a reason for that, but maybe you should get them from the practice owner. That's a huge deal. At the very least, I tell practice owners to give a year date range of collections so that the CPA can see, does this all match?
Yeah. And I love what
And
you were
what,
talking about before too. I think a lot of times, even as, the CPA that we work with the doctors, we kind of let the office manager, handle certain types of things because, they have more insight. But I think, we're just definitely going to be adding it to do on all of our dental practices of, hey, on a monthly basis, we just want to check a few things and make sure things are adding up
yeah,
because, to your point, a small step that may take 30 minutes, maybe an hour at most, maybe to establish it, but then it's a quick process every month
oh,
can really help avoid some of these common
$1
schemes because we
million
can start to ask
left.
questions and then the person stops at a minimum, like maybe they stop. And to your point, they don't steal really that much money because they realize it's not going to happen. So to your point, I like
Well, and
partnering with doctors and partnering with the office managers and have a collaborative relationship. And if they don't want that, maybe that's another, sign or red flag.
I will tell you, though, I've never had embezzler just stop.
No. Somebody made them stop.
Yeah, that's just, I've never seen that.
So
They
the
get
point
that
is you want
little
to have the
piece.
internal controls and the processes in place
Exactly.
so they can already tell like this is not going to jive here because
Yeah, usually I have them leave the practice when they find out they don't have control,
yes. Yeah, that makes
or
sense.
they're not ever going to get control. They'll leave and go to another practice that they can.
Yeah.
So,
Find an easy target if they can.
oh yeah,
So, Susan, we've had a lot
yeah.
of really great conversation here today. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you if they want more information? And I know you have a few different offerings to help dental practice owners dig in and review if they think they have a concern. So, feel free to tell them where they can go.
Yeah. SusanGunnSolutions.com. And that's two N's on gun. I'm not into gun bang bang consulting. So SusanGunnSolutions.com is my website. I do probably my most popular offering is the Ask the Expert consultation time. And that's 2 hours of reviewing your practice software and your systems as much as we can in 2 hours with the practice owner to say, here's what you need to do. I get a lot of, especially after a speaking, I don't know what reports to run.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to do this for the 2 hours helps me to show them, here's what you look for. Here's how you find this report. And here's what you look for in this report. I am a PRN consultant. I don't do long-term
Okay.
consulting. That's been my genre. But the short term, because I want to help them be independent business owners as much as possible as I can. That's my real passion. I want to show them how to do this. If after speaking, I do an Ask the Expert and there is something nefarious going on, then what they've spent on that 2 hour phone call goes towards an embezzlement case. Embezzlement cases are expensive, and I will not sell an embezzlement case, which a lot of people do. I will not sell an embezzlement case unless we know something's going on. And so this 2 hour time does a couple of things. It helps us to see if there is anything potential going on that we can find in 2 hours, obviously, but also helps train the practice owner. So it's a very valuable service to be able to say that. Most of the time I spend with the docs, there's nothing going on, but I scared the crap out of them during speaking. So I got to do something to help them. Plus, I just want to train them to be able to look for that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great service to offer.
Yeah, the embezzlement cases that I do, I call all the evidence and prepare it in a report for prosecution or for civil case. And so every report that I create, I understand that not everybody on a jury is highly educated. So I have to write it in such a way that it's understandable. And so that really takes a lot of skill and practice to be able to do that, as well as I run through all the statistics and everything 3 to 4 times before I hand it over. But I will not recommend prosecution unless they do have hardcore evidence.
Okay.
I do have another one called a financial practice analysis, where I just do the same thing as a fraud exam, but it gives them where have they failed with their systems and procedures. And it's a little bit more costly. I have mostly multi-doctor practices that do that just to see where they are. But
awesome.
I have a lot of engagement. You'll find a whole lot more on susangunnsolutions.com.
Awesome.
But those are
and there's also a book, Money In, Money Out. I read through. It's a very easy read. I agree that you make it fairly simple to understand. And so check this out.
And there's the other book, Managing Accounts Payable in Your Practice.
Yeah. So check out those books if you're just trying to get a better understanding as well, to get a better understanding and look at what you should be doing on your side for the financial perspective. So I think the key takeaway is embezzlement is going to happen to you most likely if you're in business long enough. And it's important to put some kind of controls in place, looking at your numbers, asking questions at a very minimum, looking at your reports, to kind of mitigate the risk of that happening to you. So that would be the key takeaway. Do you have anything else to chime in there?
Don't give away your responsibilities as a business owner.
Yep. You're the business owner. Even though you weren't trained in business, it's still your responsibility. So find help, find a CPA partner, reach out to Susan Gunn if you are concerned that this may be happening to you and you want to dig a little deeper. Thanks so much, Susan, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Keep that momentum going, and we will see you next time.